Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabley, and my co-host, Andrew Bobo, is on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. And welcome back to Matter of Facts podcast. We're back on a very rainy / snowy Sunday afternoon, while we are both hiding out from the precipitation gods, apparently.
Well, after the show, I got to go back out and shovel because like I said before the show here, new homeownership comes with its perks, and it also comes with the downsides. Which the downsides are I'm responsible for the sidewalks around my house, and I have two, so I have to make sure they're clear. So yeah. I'm officially gonna buy a snowblower.
I have no snow to deal with, just Lake Rabelais forming in my backyard as we speak.
Well, you have a lot of crap. I'd rather deal with the snow over hurricanes and tornadoes as much as you get, and crocodiles and any freaking spider that can kill you almost.
You know, I mean, it's only a couple of black widows and brown recluses. This is nothing to be all upset about.
I mean, we do have brown recluses here, and we do have I believe we have I believe we have brown widows as well. But you know what? It's still not as many as you. Not to mention, I'm getting my exercise in, so now I don't have to go to the gym tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we do have like a good little talk about something that I alluded to on the YouTube channel several days ago when I linked Warrior Poet Society, one of their, I think either their most or one of their more recent videos. But before that, I wanted to talk just for a few minutes about something that kind of popped up yesterday, actually. I was out with my family. We were at the state capitol, and my feelings on non-permissive environments are kind of well known at this point. I think that funny little signs and a complete and total absence of anything approaching a mitigation strategy is not exactly going to convince me not to carry a firearm. If the worst that can happen is you ask me to leave, if you can catch me. However, yesterday we went to several places where, like, I had to walk through metal detectors, and I'm pretty sure I would have done time in state penitentiary if I'd have carried a firearm. So I had to do something that I don't do super often and only did at the behest of my wife and daughter who wanted to go to these places, and I walked in completely unarmed. No gun, no knife, nada. And it was simultaneously a slightly uncomfortable experience because, like, I carry a firearm pretty much anywhere I go, always. But it also kind of brought up some things. It made me think about things a little bit differently, and I thought it bore having a discussion and maybe inviting Trek to come on at a later date because, Trek does teach this funny little class called When Gun is Not an Option, and I kind of had to live that for an afternoon yesterday. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to hear your thoughts and to hear how your mindset maybe changed because you don't have that firearm on you. But there are many different ways you can still protect yourself. But the Ed Calderon class that I took, it was the edge theory, or I can't remember exactly what it was now, but he goes through and he talks about one of our homework assignments was making a shiv, making a knife, making something that we could defend ourselves with in case we didn't have something with us. And so it was really interesting. We had to just try to find things around the house, but we could go to the store if we wanted to find things around. Just if we were camping, so we had to find stuff that we took with us and to make a weapon with. So yeah, it's that's interesting. What you guys did a little walkabout around the state there.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things that came up is, like, you and I have always been very forthcoming, and I know Trek wouldn't fight us on this because I'm sure Trek preaches a lot of the same thing, and like most intelligent, reasonable proponents of self-defense will admit happily, you can avoid 95% of the fights you might encounter. You know what I'm saying? Like if your situational awareness is on, if you're watching your surroundings, if you're not making yourself an easy target, if you don't have your freaking face buried in a damn cell phone while you're walking around, completely oblivious to the world around you, just that by itself puts you like head, shoulders, and torso above another person who might become a victim of a violent crime. Just by keeping your eyes open, just by seeing the shady person way over here, and you change your path so you don't walk closer to them. Try and stay in well-lit areas, which wasn't always possible in all honesty because of where we were parked and where we ended up going.
What's happening, folks?
Sorry.
That was odd.
No, I was pulling up a video. It's for our topic, and I didn't think it was going to play, and it did.
Autoplay killed another YouTuber. But yeah, and you know, so my situational awareness never turns off, and I've always encouraged my wife and my daughter, you know, little bits at a time to kind of like have situational awareness and watch their surroundings and watch what's going on around them. And that I fully expected. What I wasn't expecting was a very distinct but small change from the way I approach certain situations. Because, like, think about the one thing that a firearm gives you that a knife, your bare hands, an impact weapon doesn't give you. It gives you standoff distance, right? Like, anybody that's ever had a very specific kind of firearms class where you're like struggling for a firearm or you're in extreme close quarters, everyone knows distance is your buddy when you have a handgun. Not like 200 yards distance, but distance. Enough distance to get your gun out, get it drawn, get it presented, get your shot. And when you close to a certain distance, that becomes a much trickier situation. What I found was that because I didn't have a firearm, I was actually looking for those situations where I didn't have distance to deal with because I didn't have something that gave me standoff distance. If an encounter happened, I had two things at my disposal. One was this, which, you know, you and I have talked about what the bezel of it on a decent aluminum or steel handgun will do to somebody's forehead. So, like, this was a good little impact weapon in my bare hands. And that was all I had to deal with a problem if one arose. But this doesn't give me distance. This doesn't give me standoff. So what I was looking for was where normally I would be very nervous around, like a blind corner where I couldn't see around it. I was now looking for those blind corners, because what the blind corner gives me is if there is somebody waiting on the other side of that corner for me, I get to sneak up on them, and they get to sneak up on me, and they don't have standoff distance on me, so I'm already at weapons range. Whereas with a handgun, I would normally step away from the corner and pie around it, look around it. It's a lot of little things like that where, like, the inability to have standoff distance because not having a handgun, it changed the way I approached those situations. Not huge differences, but it approached the way I looked at them. Like, I even mentioned to my daughter as we were walking along a wall, coming up on a blind corner. She was asking me a question. I kind of, you know, tried to get her to stop talking for a second as we approached the corner. And I told her after we got to the corner, there's nobody there, obviously. But I told her afterwards, I'm like, the reason why I did that was because if you're talking and there's somebody waiting on the other side of the corner, they know we're coming. But I don't know they're there. So with you being quiet, me being quiet, us walking up to the corner, they're going to be as surprised as I am. So at least we're on that kind of equal footing. You know, it was lots of little things like that. There was one point where we were walking through a very wide open area, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, I can see a potential opponent coming towards me from long distance. They can see me coming from long distance. We have options as far as altering our path or reversing course. But on the other hand, it was an uncomfortable experience to be that exposed, knowing anybody can see me coming, knowing anyone can see my family coming, and we have nowhere to escape to, we have nowhere to hide, we have nowhere to just seek concealment where I can break their line of sight. You know, it was one of those, in not insignificant ways, and in ways I didn't totally expect, it really changed the way I looked at my environment around me. It changed, just that small change from going from an engagement window of, 25 to 35 yards, which I'd comfortably make a handgun shot from, to hands on range, the change in that range totally changed how I looked at my environment. And it changed a lot of the way I approached a lot of situations. It was something that, like, now that I've kind of gone through that and I've had to think through that, it's something I'll probably be attributing more time and attention to because I did it naturally as an extension of other training I've had. But it caught me off guard, I guess, how much it changed the way I moved through an environment. I was not expecting that. But comes with the territory because, like Trek says, sometimes gun is not an option. Sometimes knife is not an option. Sometimes we're going into places like airports or places with metal detectors or banks. We're going into places where we are way past the, oh, I don't carry Beretta, I'm fine because the silly little sign on the front door doesn't stop me. Or legally, the consequences of being caught in those places with a gun is so minor, who gives a damn? Now we're in the position of, I'm walking past a metal detector. There's a 0.0% chance I'm not going to get caught, and the penalty is bad. So in those places, you have two options. Don't go, which is not always an option, or you leave your gun in the truck, and that's a very uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, I mean, if you leave your leaving your firearm in the truck, though, at least you know it's in the vicinity. To where if you get back to your truck, you can at least, okay, we're back to the vehicle, let's get out of here, and you arm up as you're leaving, if needed. But no, I mean, I see what you're saying. Whenever I go to a place like, I mean, like I'm going to a concert in March. I'm going to a concert downtown. Obviously, I can't carry a firearm. Uh, and you can't even carry a knife. But what I can carry is are pens, or a pen. So I mean, a pen can be used as a weapon. So I'll definitely be having a pen on me. But I mean, if you have an active shooter, I'm not gonna. It's one of those things where trying to get people out of the building and save lives versus being a hero and running to your death. Are you going to run and like try to run to, and if you're away from if you're on the balcony and the shooter is on the bottom floor, or whatever's going on is on the bottom floor, am I going to take the time to run over, and, oh, I'm going to help you, I'm going to stop you, that kind of thing? No. I'm going to be getting out of the building. I'm going to be trying to get as many people out as possible. And if I come across people that are injured, I will try to render aid.
Yeah.
Get them out, get them, to scene safety. So, but it doesn't stop you from looking up the building, looking, okay, these are the exits. This is where I came in at. If I take these steps, they go down this way, and knowing where the exits are, knowing where the stairs. If you're on the balcony, if you're on the second balcony or third, whatever, especially like hockey games and stuff like that. If something were to ever happen and you had to just mass exodus, well, this is and you're not going to memorize every little bit of the stadium or whatever, but you can at least say, okay, this is where I'm going in at. This is my seat, because you buy the ticket, you buy your seat. So okay, well, let's look at this plans. Okay, there's an exit here, there's an exit here, there's steps here, there's stairs here going down, stuff like that. So you can definitely plan for that kind of stuff. It's interesting that yeah. I mean, yeah, I do the same thing as far as like checking blind corners and just head on a swivel, really. And if I'm not armed with a firearm, yeah, I'm still head on a swivel. I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it puts me on any more of edge, like on an edge or anything like that. Like I'm not nervous. I don't feel nervous, I guess. It's just, well, okay, well, what can I do? What else can I do besides a firearm? What can I do? And closing the distance is, if it's possible, closing the distance is like the best thing you could do, if it's needed. If you're far away, then heck, get out of there, and say you're not going to run to your death. And then also OODA loop. No one's ever heard of that. Throwing, if there is an assailant, if there's something that's going on, doing something to throw them off is going to is going to give you an upper hand. They've already made the decision that they're going to be doing this. What can you do to throw them out of their haze and out of their basically they're I mean they're in basically tunnel vision because they're so set on doing this activity that, well, if you can do something to throw them out of focus and kind of disrupt their brain a little bit, and you don't have a firearm to do that, what can you do? Are there objects around you that you can throw? Are there objects? A lot of the active shooter courses that I've been reviewing or looking into and stuff, a lot of them are objects that you can throw and distract the person because it's a natural human right, or not human right, sorry, human reflex to, if you have an object coming at you, block it. And so it's certain things you can do. And so yeah, when a gun is not an option, I took that class. If you're in Michigan, I suggest taking that class. It's one of the most important classes. It's one of the best classes that Trepp teaches. But he goes into he just goes into the different ways of protection when a firearm is not an option. And it all depends on where you're at, again, because yeah, I would love to have a knife on me. If I can't have a knife on me, if I can't have a gun on me, I want a knife. But if I can't have a knife or a gun on me, okay, well, what's the next thing I can do? Well, I can carry a pen, and I mean, it's not 100%, but it's something. There's something else there. So
Yeah, and I guess like you said, it's not that it it was an incredibly uncomfortable situation. I guess kind of my thought was like it really altered the way I looked at my environment in a way that I wasn't anticipating. I guess it was something that I came to realize later in the day, and I thought to myself, I'm like, it totally just the difference in engagement range. That one variable totally changed how I looked at my environment, and it was I don't know, it caught me off guard. I thought it'd be good thought provoking conversation,
yeah,
but we do have a big topic. So
yeah,
anybody that's on YouTube, I already shared Warrior Poet Society's video. The short version of it is apparently they had a gentleman that was training with them. I believe I recall they said he was 60.
he was an older gentleman as well. And by older, I mean I believe he was in his 60s, training with what I believe was one of the rifle classes. Completed course of fire, everything was great. He was standing offline, and then it wasn't John Lovell. It was actually that's what I was looking up. It was actually Paul. I don't know his last name, but they call him the Battle Gnome.
He has an awesome beard, by the way. I'm very
yes, he
jealous.
Yeah, and yeah, so really, it seems like really good dude. But yeah, it's a very interesting video. So if you haven't watched it, I suggest looking it up and watching it. But yeah, so anyway, it was kind of all this. Honestly, for this patient, the stars aligned for him. Like the right circumstances to save his life were all there, and like they had, I believe it was a couple paramedics. They had one guy that he carries an AED with him everywhere he goes,
Which is
so
clutch in this
right.
situation.
But yeah, so anyway, he went down. He went down, and this is where a good safety brief is needed. I've never taken a class with War Poet Society, which I would love to one of these days. But my experience with MDFI, they spend a solid 30 minutes, give or take, if not longer, on their safety brief. And this is, it sounds like sounds like these guys have a good safety brief set up to where they have main care, secondary care, and then they have ways of getting the patient out if needed, and then somebody who calls 911 and all that stuff. So yeah, it was very interesting listening to the video, and that the guy basically went down. They started CPR, no pulse, and that's another thing too. Is if you don't have no CPR, take classes. It's very important. I think everybody and their mother should be trained with CPR, CPR, AED, even first aid stuff like that. But CPR is definitely needed. And yeah, so they started CPR on him. They ended up Paul went on. Yeah, Paul. Sorry, he got on the phone with dispatch, and it was I can't remember exactly the timeline that they had, but I think I mean, it was quite a long time before an ambulance got there, and
If memory serves, it was 35 minutes.
right,
Like
which is
they were told to expect 45, and apparently the ambulance busted butt and got there in 35. But I mean, call it what it is. Most outside gun ranges are in pretty rural areas by default.
yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is, but I mean, they got on the chest, CPR compressions, uh, hooked up the AED, zapped him. I believe they zapped him twice with AED, and
Hmm.
he regained consciousness. He came back, and that was very interesting because yeah, if you don't have a safety plan, and you don't have to go into a super long safety brief and all that stuff, but if you going to the range, whether you're by yourself or with friends or whatever, have a safety brief. This is not common for. I mean, not a lot of people get shot uh, at gun ranges, thankfully. But I have a med kit that I carry with me. I have an IFAK that's in my backpack, and like so just have those things available and have that training. And even if you don't have the training, hopefully if there's other people at the gun range, hopefully they have training too. So that's why like I encourage everybody to carry an IFAK, because again, if you don't have the training, hey, I got these tools. Well, somebody might be able to pull out, come up and say, hey, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. Or even if it's as simple as, hey, I have an IFAK and I know how to use a tourniquet. If you need a tourniquet, throw a tourniquet on. However, I mean, CPR, you can't use a tourniquet. But yeah, it was an interesting story.
Yeah, it was very sobering to me because, like, of all the medical emergencies that people prepare for in a firearms training context, I feel like gunshot wound is probably the foremost one in most people's minds, with good reason. Lots of
Mhm.
people doing things they may not have ever done before with live rounds being fired around. I mean, yes, to your point, gunshots don't happen very often at ranges, ironically and thankfully, but it's just one of those situations where like the greatest likelihood of injury is somebody points a gun someplace they're not supposed to and violates one of the air firearm safety rules and bad stuff happens. So things like trauma care, blowout kits, tourniquets, those kinds of things are probably foremost on people's minds. I'll be the first to admit, like, I don't have an AED. I am not trained on an AED. It's just a level of care that I never fool with when I was enlisted. It wasn't honestly the foremost thing in our minds. Like the biggest things we were trained for, being in a desert environment, were massive dehydration, heat stroke, and trauma care from people getting parts of them blown off by IEDs or mortars or rockets or various other things. You know what I'm saying? Like the idea of a 60-year-old man dropping from a massive heart attack is something that is like completely outside of my skill set other than chest compressions. And I feel like the man is indebted to the other people that were in that class because they did have an AD and the training to use it. But it's very sobering to realize that like it's sobering to sit here and think about, would that man have survived if they hadn't had that AED and the nearest AED ended up being 35 minutes away via ambulance, and the only thing they had to try to bridge the gap was chest compressions and rescue breathing. Would he be alive today? I mean, I've heard stranger outcomes from medical emergencies, but if it weren't for that AED, I'd say his chances would have been precipitously less.
Right, and I think I mean, going off of their video and stuff, they made the comment that if it wasn't for having the AED, they don't think that he would have survived. Uh, who knows? Hindsight's 2020, and we really don't know. We will never know if he would have or would not have. But AEDs, I mean, if you can get them, the AEDs run. I mean, I guess it depends on the brand and stuff like that, but they usually run around $1,500 to $1,800. And then the pads and batteries, you got every like three. I think batteries are 5 years, I want to say, and pads are like every like 3 or 4. I think I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, if they expire, but that's the thing though is if you have it or if you can get one, and that's the thing is like the range that you go to, uh, find out if they have one. I know it's an outdoor range, but find out if they have one. And I mean, and then that's the thing is like I know a lot of companies they don't have them, but maybe it's time to start getting them. I mean, cardiac events are on the rise for some weird reason.
For
Uh,
reasons.
yeah. So, but having the training for CPR, that's invaluable. Like you're not gonna if it's all you have is CPR, all you can do. If that's all you can do, that's all you can do. And that's you have people there, and you have enough people in the class to where, hey, if you don't know how to do it, watch me, and this is how you do it. And if you need somebody else on the chest, because doing CPR for 35 minutes straight is not something I would really want to do. It'd be nice to have some people to swap out with.
Yeah. But this kind of brings to mind, I guess, kind of a broader conversation, not specifically about this one instance, but like when I say this, medical emergencies, how to react when 911 isn't an option, I'm not saying you shouldn't call 911. I'm saying when calling 911 and waiting for the ambulance is not an option. Like, this is the whole reason why we jump on people's butts all the time about things like tourniquets and stop the bleed classes and everything in that vein, because like you and I both know, if you have an arterial bleed, you don't have 35 minutes. You may not have 5 minutes. You have time to get your crap out of your bag and fix the problem right now immediately, or this person's gonna have a toe tag by the end of the day. Because massive arterial bleeds do not wait 35 minutes. Period in discussion. There's a lot of injuries out there that don't wait prolonged periods of time before you deal with them. And, there's an argument to be made here that maybe something worth considering is the fact that what you might have a base amount of medical gear that you keep on your person or in your vehicle or wherever. And depending on where you're going, maybe you need to consider augmenting it. In this case, rural gun range, middle of nowhere, limited ambulance response. Take this in a different direction. Let's say you're going hiking with some buddies. You're going to be 5 miles off the paved road way back in the woods. How do you deal with a medical emergency 5 miles from the paved road when you can't get an ambulance out there? You may not have a clearing to get medevac in there. It might require stabilizing a patient and then hiking them out to get them to a higher level of care. Do you have the stuff to do that? Do you have the know-how to do it? Do you have the ability to care for that patient on site for a period of time before you can get some kind of help out there to deal with the problem? How many times have we been at prepper camp and somebody's gotten patched up by another prepper camp attendee because we're on a mountaintop in the middle of frickin' rural North Carolina? And thank God there just happens to be a plethora of first responders all over the place who all happen to have bags full of goodies in case somebody gets cut or somebody's blood pressure hits the deck or somebody's heart rate goes ballistic. And I'm listing situations that Andrew can remember because he was there with me when they happened. It's not like a straw man argument. Like, we've literally seen these things happen. And thankfully we were in situations where, despite how rural the area was, it wasn't as big of an issue because there were people who were prepared to deal with the problem and stabilize that person either to not need a higher level of care or at least until they could be brought to the nearest hospital, which was some distance away. But, I mean, what do you think, Andrew? Does the environment we're about to go into now mean we have to think about, do I need different gear or more gear? Because if I'm in let's say I'm in my normal environment, if someone gets hurt, anywhere in this town, I'm 15 minutes from an emergency room. But if I'm going to be an hour away from an emergency room, do I now need to think about maybe I need to carry more stuff or different stuff?
Well, I mean, you can go overboard with it. You can definitely go down the rabbit hole. I mean, I'm not going to, even though where I work, we have backboards and all that stuff that we technically don't need, but we do have them, and or we might actually I want to rephrase that. We do need them, but we don't use them. Well, what's the old saying? It's I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Yeah, it's a pain in the frickin' butt to have the backboards, headboard, have splints and all that stuff set aside or sit in the vehicle and you have to work around it. And okay, I want to clean the vehicle, so now I got to pull stuff out, whatever. So, but are you going to have all that stuff in your personal vehicle? Your personal vehicle? Probably not. I do have a C collar in my med kit, but that's just something that I got randomly. So the thing is, though, is you can plan and plan and plan. Something always is going to happen. You're going to be like, ah, crap, I didn't pack that or have that. Or, I mean, you can't necessarily pack a helicopter in your back pocket for a life flight. But what you can pack is you can pack road flares. You can pack, they make them now where they're pretty bright LEDs that you can throw out. And the fire departments are getting a lot or have a lot of them. The one that I used to be on, they were starting to get them where they had is basically as a puck and you hit the button and it starts flashing and you throw it out and throw it outside and it'll start flashing and the helicopters they can see that. So you can pack stuff like that. Like I said, the road flares. You can have the contingencies. Uh, it's like going off of say MDFI like training. I mean, we're in Albion. For an Albion at the range, it's not that it's a good hike, uh, but is there a spot where the helo can land? Well, there's farmers fields all over the place. Okay, well, but have that, and that's the thing I really like about, and just I keep going back to MDFI because that's who I've trained with the most. And okay, well, if they can't get to us, we're going to them. And well, like, and they have the thing, they have set stuff set up to where okay, we have this truck here, keys are ignition. If we can't get to the ambulance, we're gonna load the person up here. We're gonna drive through, and we're gonna meet the ambulance on the road if we have to, or take them, if it's too rough. So having those kind of thoughts and having those having that plan, that's not a bad thing to do. Now, if you're out hiking and everything by yourself, well, one, if you're by yourself, let somebody know where you're going and how long. Okay, I'm gone for this long. If I'm going to be gone longer, I'll text you or something. But hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. And honestly, if you're somebody who likes to hike a lot by yourself, backcountry and stuff like that, if you live in the areas, satellite phone that might be they're costly, but if it's worth your life, I mean, again, you might never need it, but the time that you need it, you're gonna be like, crap, I wish I had a satellite phone.
Just to push back on that whole expensive thing, though, there are much lower cost options that allow you to basically send a text message. And bear in mind that from a data transmission point of view, a couple of strings of text is a ton less information to send and a lot less satellite time than voice.
Hmm.
And as a result, it's a lot cheaper. So you can literally get, it looks like a little old like 1990s beeper, and you can punch the little buttons and send a text message via satellite from almost anywhere in the world. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
or you
cheap.
get a beacon. I mean, I know they'd have them to where you hit the button and uh, it sends a signal. It's a distress beacon, or distress signal or whatever you want to call it. And so there are options out there if that's something that you like to do. You like to go out and on your own, cool, do it. But think about it, and have these plans. Have the med kit. If you're by yourself, I mean, even if you're not by yourself, and you talked about hiking and say you're hiking and you're an hour away from a main road. Thankfully, fire departments train for that kind of stuff. So they they have the backboards, they have the stuff to be able to carry people out in litters and stuff like that. So thankfully, you don't necessarily have to do it all on your own. But that's if you can get a call out to help. If you can get a
Mm.
call out or a distress signal or whatever it is, and you gotta and okay, 911's on the way. Okay, I'll meet you on the trail. And if you need to start dragging somebody out, start dragging them out. But yeah, it just all depends on what's going on. If they if you can move them, move them. If but if you move them and it's possibly they have a an open fracture or something like that, that's something that could possibly cause more harm, is staying in place the best thing. But and that's where again a good medical kit comes. If you have a medical kit, a splint, just having a way to splint somebody, splint a leg or an arm, uh, will do a lot. So having that ability to do it, the training and the equipment, to make a makeshift splint or do something, if that's all you can do is like, hey, we're gonna do this, and then keep the person calm and wait for help to arrive, and then hey, it's getting dark. Well, we need ways of starting a fire or signaling for help. Well, I carry off. You put a flare, have a flare on you, have a way of something that you can either signal or start a fire if needed. So it doesn't take a lot of forethought. It's just being prepared. I mean, that's the whole preparedness mindset, is think of the contingencies.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, like, I agree with you. I don't want to encourage anybody, and I certainly don't go down the rabbit hole of, like, obsessing over, like, how many band-aids do I need to put in my pack because I'm going 34.27 miles away from home today. Like, there's a point at which this becomes a little ridiculous. But I guess my thought process is, like, in a slightly different vein, is like, when I go camping with the family, like, I have the IFAK that goes everywhere with me. It's in the truck. The IFAK is stuff that's going to kill you in 90 seconds or less. It's tourniquets, it's chest seals, stuff
Max
ostensibly.
trauma.
Yeah, it's max trauma. Ostensibly for car accidents, but it's keep red stuff inside the body. But then beside that, I also have this whole, like, I think it's actually an old food container, but it's a Tupperware container, and it is stuffed to the brim with, like, Band-Aids and Tylenol and Benadryl and Ace bandages, and you see where I'm going with this. It's not stuff that's going to kill you in 90 seconds. It's not even stuff that's going to kill you anytime soon. But it is, if my family is camping, we're probably pretty far away from civilization. We're in a fairly remote area because that's just where campsites tend to be. And, oh, honey, I got a bee sting and I need Benadryl. Now becomes a little bit of a bigger issue if I have to go drive an hour into town, and a town I'm not familiar with, and find a drugstore that's open at whatever time this happens to try to remedy the problem. Or I just keep Benadryl in my kit. Or, honey, I hipped and I twisted my ankle. I have Ace bandages. You see what I'm saying? It's one of those things that's like, it's a whole extra bin of stuff. And I can't say it's really necessary in my normal daily travels. Because in my normal daily travels, if somebody twists an ankle, we get in the truck, we come home, I've got stuff here to deal with the problem. This is a bin of stuff to deal with problems when I am not anywhere near home, and I'm nowhere near civilization, and I'm nowhere near an emergency room. And I guess that's kind of my thought process, is I have this bin of extra stuff, which is really meant to be a bridge between the stuff I have here at home and where we're at, which is a remote location where we don't have access to all the preps we have here at home, and we don't have ready access to a drugstore and emergency room. And I guess that's kind of where my thought process was going when I heard about this story. Like, I think this makes a really, really good argument for any training company of any reasonable size to invest the money in an AED. I think this makes a really good argument for any business that has substantial foot traffic to invest in having AEDs. And a lot of them already have, but a lot of them haven't either. So it's one of those thought processes of, if I am a father with a wife and a daughter, do I keep an AED in my house and suck up the expense and do all that for 3 people? What are the odds of one of the 3 of us being a 40-year-old, a 39-year-old, and a 10-year-old needing an AED because one of us has a heart attack? Fairly minimal. Let's view our risk in a reasonable framework and then make a decision based on that. On the other hand, if I am running a business and I have 1,500 people in and out of my business every day, 365 days a year, what are the odds that AED is going to end up being necessary one day? You see what I'm saying? Like, the environment almost to me has to push what gear and what preps we have, because that environment is changing the risk profile dramatically. It's the same conversation I have all the time about there are certain preps that I don't have as highly prioritized as other people do, just because of, like, go back to what oh goodness, Mike was always telling us about area assessment.
Mhm.
You know, like, read the lay of the land around me and determined these were the things I was the most likely to encounter. So I prepped to those things first, and I prepped to these other things next, and then so on and so forth. So where do you put the AED in your list of preps? Do you work in the facility with tons and tons of people? Do you work at the gun range or at the training company out in the middle of nowhere where your ambulance is 45 minutes away? Do you live in the city where if you need an ambulance, you get one in 5 minutes, you can run somebody to an emergency room? Like, does the environment change how we prioritize that?
Right, and I mean, I would definitely say yeah. I mean, like, going off of what you're saying, and that's the thing is if you're going hiking, not only you already have, especially if you're going overnight hiking, your bag is already full of all everything you need. Are the chances of me needing something like an AED? Uh, do I need to pack an AED or do I need to pack moleskin because I'm going on a 30-mile hike, and the chances are that I might actually produce a blister are higher than a heart attack. And yeah, and that's the thing, and that all depends on the health of the people and the individuals that you're going with and everything. But again, do you need an AD? And that's where, yeah, definitely, if you have one and you want to leave it in your car, then okay, leave it in the car or something. But I guess I just keep going back to just look at what you're doing and plan accordingly. Yeah, I mean, we've all, like, those of us who have been to prepper camp, we see how overpacked we get when we're sitting there. I'm unpacking for just me, and I'm like, okay, I don't need these bins. Like, I don't need this stuff, but I have it. It's like the one time that I brought my smoker down. It's like I had a smoker. Okay, that's cool. Do I need
Dude,
it?
that's
No.
that
But it was
smoker and wins bear meat, though. That was a match
yeah,
made in heaven.
yeah.
I will
But
fight you to the death on the fact that you didn't need to bring the smoker that year.
and then like the MOF camping trip coming up soon. I'm thinking like, oh, should I bring the smoker again? Maybe. We'll see. But that's the thing though, is like you just need to your loadout needs to be it needs to be what you need. And if you like, and that's the thing is if you want to and that's why I like to push, get your loadout done with what you need. What do I need to come back alive from this hike, from this overnight 2-night hike or whatever, especially if I'm in the winter or something like that. All right, I have the basics, I have what I need to survive. What do you want to take as a plus? And build off of that. And if you have the space and you have the spots that if you're hiking and you want to carry it on you, more power to you. If you're driving in, that's even better. But dictating the mission or dictating what gear you have for the mission you should always think about it, and that goes back to carrying a firearm. Carrying a firearm. It's that goes back to carrying I carry a med kit on my ankle, and I had a guy at work saying, he made fun of me about it. He was like, oh well, he goes, what areas are you going into? I'm like, well, I'm not going into looking for anything, but if I've the chances of either somebody coming in and shooting up the place or stabbing or something violent happening, or me coming up on a car accident on the way home to where I have to render aid, where I might have to place a tourniquet, I might have to place a chest seal. I have a pressure band, I have an Israeli bandage on my ankle, and so if I can apply pressure bandage onto someone's arm that's bleeding, doesn't need a tourniquet, but pressure is holding. Like, you coming up on an accident is going to happen more than anything else, really. And that's where like my idea comes from was, yeah, I carry a med kit on me. I had one on me. I had one within reach usually all the time. And yeah, so it's just like, do I need it? No. But do I want to get to a spot where I'm gonna need it and I don't have it? No. So, it's
Since you brought it up, I know we're going to be wrapping this up here in just a minute, but you reminded me of a bit of razzing I had to hear from a coworker because I work in an office.
mhm.
So, being the long bearded prepper in the office full of office folks, it's an interesting experience. Let's leave it at that. But we had our annual active shooter training several years ago, and it's the class that I usually sit in the back and keep my mouth shut and then write snarky stuff on the comment card because I feel like I felt like in the past years the training was, to be kind, useless. This particular year, it was still, I think, mostly useless, but some interesting things came out of it. The instructor was different from prior years. He seemed, just judging by the way he was talking about things and his mannerisms, I don't know what his background was. I kind of got the impression law enforcement, but he seemed to kind of know a little bit more about his business than a person that read this crap out of a PowerPoint presentation. So my ears perked up. I listened a little more than usual. And he talked about cat tourniquets. He talked about Stop the Bleed. He actually apparently got pretty heavy-handed with management, which went nowhere, of course. But he got pretty heavy-handed with management about the fact that they should have a percentage of the staff trained in Stop the Bleed. They should have the little wall-mounted kits full of the cat tourniquets. They should have, at minimum, one of those on each of the 2 floors, possibly more. And he was very critical of the fact that we have, like, our entire medical response class, our entire medical response plan for the facility is we have an on-site nurse, and that's it. And his point of view was if you have a mass casualty event, that one nurse is going to be up to her eyeballs in bleeding, screaming people in 15 seconds.
And
You
that's
need
it.
to
She's not
train.
a bit herself.
Yeah, you need to train. And his point, which I think was reasonable, was you need to train 10% of the staff. Like, collect volunteers, train 10% of the staff and Stop the Bleed, train them how to use cat tourniquets and do CPR, and you will have a very durable, very diffused casualty assessment and mitigation strategy. Because now you have, in a 650 person, facility, you have 65 trained people all across the building.
Mhm.
And that was a better solution to him than what we have. It went nowhere, of course, because that's just the way things are. But I digress. But the thing that was interesting was we got back to our desks. Now, I wear the crazy prepper on my sleeve. Like, I'm not shy about it because I've way too many times in my time working here in this office environment have I had people come to me because they know the stuff I'm into and ask me questions because they want to know. They want to know about first aid. They want to know about medical equipment. They want to know about firearms. So, in an effort to make myself accessible so that people can learn that want to know, I'm happy to be the butt of everybody's jokes. I just don't care anymore. But I was sitting there and I overheard one of my coworkers saying basically that I probably already had tourniquets like in my desk drawer because this guy had mentioned that we should all have them, this and the other. So without saying a word, I opened up the desk drawer, grabbed my tourniquet, held it over my head and said, "You want to know how to use one? I'll strap it on you right here now." And I got a room full of silence because none of them expected I would actually have a cat tourniquet sitting in my desk drawer. And they asked me why I had it, and I'm like, did you and I just come out of the same class? Like, that guy literally just got through telling you that it was going to be 35 minutes before ambulances managed to get in here because it was going to take that long to clear the scene and contain everything. Do you know how long it takes you to bleed from an arterial bleed? I don't have this tourniquet here to save you. It's for self-use. I wasn't a popular person that day. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those weird situations where, like, it drives me crazy because, like, I kind of expected that reaction from my coworkers. Almost, there's a handful of them that are combat vets and quite a few more that are military veterans. But then there's just as many people in there they've never experienced violence in their lives. And they don't understand how precariously perched on the edge of a disaster they are every day. Not to say that we're in danger every day or that we should freak out about it, but like you and I both know how fast everyday situations turn into, oh my God, it's life or death. It happens every day. Just because it has happened to you recently doesn't mean it doesn't happen all the time. And that was the reaction I get from these people is, well, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, well, it'd be ridiculous until the day it actually happened. And then all of a sudden, the crazy guy with the cat tourniquet at his desk starts to look like a genius.
Well, it's ridiculous until you need it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean,
that goes back to the active shooter kits. Oh yeah, we don't need those. Those are a little bit over the top. Those are ridiculous. Well, if something were to happen where it doesn't have to be just an active shooter, it can be any mass casualty incident. You guys had a tornado hit your building. If that did any more damage to where it caused something come down and it came down on a group of people that were hiding, then you know what? That right there, that's a mass casualty incident, and you have the kit sitting on the wall that's on the other side of the building or whatever. As somebody's doing triage and somebody's helping get some people up on their feet and get the people who can stand and walk and get them out of the area and assessing the situation, one person can be running and getting that stop the bleed kit. You might not need it, but go grab it. And that's the thing. So, yeah, that's usually my comeback is, yeah, I don't need it now, but what if I do? Well, what if I need it in 10 minutes? What if I get into a car accident driving home? What if I come upon a car accident coming home? What if I am walking downtown and somebody decides to stab somebody else or shoot somebody else? Or hey, you're at a restaurant and a server slips and falls, which happens all the time, and they slice their arm open on a piece of glass. What? Okay, well, the what if scenarios can roll and can keep going and going and going. Well, I want to be prepared as best as I can for any what if scenario, and have a game plan for something that if I don't have it on me, have a game plan of what I can do to help. Because I don't want to stand around and be a gawker and someone who's going to grab their phone and be like, oh, I'm going to put this on YouTube. No, be somebody that can actually do something and be something to society. Don't be just a drain.
Yeah. And on that note, as we roll this out, I think the important thing to do here is to remember that on top of conversations about the gear is to have a plan. And there's a thing in the self-defense side of this equation that's called violence of action. In other words, if you encounter a violent situation, then your own violence of action is a one way to turn the encounter back in your favor. And if you sit there all passive and pee your pants and while you fumble with your handgun to get it out of your holster, you're probably going to have a bad day. Whereas if you immediately jump down the throat of whoever is trying to hurt you, you might turn the encounter back your direction and flip the momentum back. The same thing applies here. If you have a plan, you implement without hesitation, you give very direct orders to people. You apply pressure. You start doing chest compressions. You call 911. Do not assume that everybody else in the room is not going to sit there with their freaking chin on their chest or their cell phone in their hand. Point at a person, look them in the eye, and tell them, you quit screwing around and do what I just said. Because you have to take command of the situation and tell people what to do and yell at them to shock them out of, whatever mental state they're in and get their butts engaged in fixing the problem. But I urge you all to consider the fact that if you are the one with the plan and you are the one with the training, then you are uniquely situated to fix the problem. Do not count on anyone around you to help unless you tell them to help. Otherwise, they're going to sit there with their thumb in their mouth and wait for, I don't know, divine providence. Who knows?
But one more thing, really quick, and that's for the company I work for. I just took over as CPR director. And so, and that's
Now listen, you have to make sure you tell your new students, for me, no tourniquets for head wounds.
Yeah, right.
It's a good icebreaker joke.
Well, that's first aid classes, but no. So really quick, that's with what you just explained. That's how we train people, our workforce and stuff, and all the students and everything. But the one thing that we instruct what I tell people, and then also with the new guys that are coming on board for our department that when they get certified medically, is the one thing I say, and that's the one of the biggest things I took away from being on the fire department is own your scene. If you know what you're doing and you can take charge, you own that scene. You tell people what they need to do, affirmative, like in your affirmative, I don't know the freaking words I'm trying to say, but basically you just get them to do what you need to do. If you have to swear at them, swear at them. If you need to tell them to get out of the room, they're not doing a thing, tell them to get out of the room. Own that scene. So
Until somebody that knows more than you do comes along, and they'd be like, "Here's your patient. Have a party."
So
Because, like, call it what it is. That is always my goal in an emergency situation. I am actively sitting there looking for a person that knows more than I do to hand that bucket over and be like, "Have a party, guys. Y'all are the pros." I just try to keep.
You help. You can assist. If
Mhm.
paramedics show up and you're like, well, you know more than I do, don't just get up and walk away. You're okay. Hey, what can I do to help you? And here's your patient, but what can I do? So, but yeah, own the scene. So on that note, we're out.
Yep. Matter of Facts podcast heading out the door. Good night, everybody.
Bye.